You're listening to She's the Business podcast.
How do you know when it's the right time to hire a person to join your team? And how do you hire that right person and not someone who ends up costing you so much time and energy in questions or mistakes or all of those things that can happen when we don't get the right person on our team? Well, that's what today's episode is all about. I can't wait to bring you this jam-packed episode full of expertise around choosing and hiring the right people for your team and how to make it easy, because we're always in a hurry to get that person, aren't we? It's always the last minute. We need them now, like yesterday, and how we can be still strategic and objective about it so that we do get the right person and we're not making last minute rash emotional decisions. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Osborne, and in my 23 years of business and marketing, I've built many brands to become multi-billion-dollar companies. And just in the last 10 years, I've built 2 online businesses of my own from my dining room table with 2 little babies running around at my feet. I've made it my mission to inspire you to get out of your own way and become the successful business owner who's living the lifestyle you really desire without all the hustle. This is She's the Business podcast, made by women for women. This is your weekly dose of motivation and inspiration.
My very special guest today is the lovely Paula Maidens. Now, Paula is an entrepreneur now, but she didn't used to be. She started out as a recruiter in corporate, and she became the director at a global recruitment firm in London at the height of her career. But she turned to her own business and wanted to help small business owners in making the right hires, in building the team of their dreams that actually helps their business run or not run. These days, Paula is a hiring and leadership coach, and I can't wait to bring her to you. We're talking so much about the mistakes that we entrepreneurs make in our hiring decisions, in how we can avoid them, what to look out for, how we can be that better leader in making the right hires, in learning what the right questions are that we need to ask, and what are those simple things that we can do to avoid hiring the wrong people. No matter what size your business is, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of value out of this interview. So without further ado, let me play it for you. Okay, and I'm here with the lovely Paula Maidens, who is a hiring and leadership coach. She is a recruitment expert, the person who is brilliant at building teams. And I'm so excited to have you with me today, Paula. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to chat to you.
So can you, before we kick off, because we've got so many great things to cover around, everything to do with building a team, why we leave it too late, why maybe we hire people that might not be the best fit for us at times, all of that stuff that goes into it. I know that we've all experienced things like that, but please give us a little bit, the 1 minute, 2 minute background on your business. What is it exactly that you do and who do you help? And even if you like, how you got there in the first place.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, a lot of people do say, what's a hiring and leadership coach and how do I know if I need one? So what I do is I support small growing business entrepreneurs to grow by teaching them how to build epic support systems around them. So eventually we all reach a stage in our business where we need to choose, do I want to grow because I can't keep doing any more myself? And so we need to plug people into our businesses. So the hiring coach, the hiring strategist side of things is teaching you as the entrepreneur how to know, well, what is the right sort of person to work with me, the one that's going to make me feel amazing as an individual. And then once you've got people working with you, it's a bit like, well, what do you need to do so that you bring out the best in them? And so you don't wake up one day thinking, oh my goodness, I have all these people around me and they're just giving me more headaches than what it was worth. So that's what the 2 components are, hiring and leadership. So I do that through coaching. I've got some self-paced programs that people can work through. And I truly just believe I'm here on a mission. My mission, and I'm here is just literally just to change the way we think about it. So it's possible to ask for and receive amazing support as you're growing your business so you can have an epic business, but also a life that you love.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. Because we didn't start a business just to work. Like the team is such a critical piece, isn't it? And like, let's dive into that for a moment at first, because I think that it feels to a lot of people like it can be a huge thing. Like suddenly you go from you starting a business and working in it to actually hiring a team and then being an employer. And for some reason, a lot of fear around that, like what that feels like. When do you know you're ready? I guess people leave it too late sometimes, that they get into that place where they literally burnt out and working so hard. So I've asked you a whole lot of questions there. Feel free to answer whichever one you like in whatever order.
Yeah, I think one of the big reasons it feels hard is because I'm sure that you've heard this as well. I feel like there's this default conversation out there that it is hard. And so I feel like that we all fear it because it's kind of like, well, everyone says this is going to be really difficult. And I mean, maybe it's the same as Facebook ads. Like that's how I felt about Facebook ads before I tried, this is a tricky thing and it's going to take lots to get it right. I feel like that's just so many people, and maybe it's from corporate, maybe whatever, but like so many people just put out there, this is going to be tricky. So we always go, so it's almost like we go into this thinking like, well, this is this foregone conclusion that this is going to be hard to find someone that's right. And then when you have people, they're expensive and they never do what you want. And so I guess part of the reason I feel like I'm put on this planet is actually to shift the belief that sits around that, because truly it is possible to have amazing people working for you. And by amazing people, it's not anybody else's definition of what an A player or a rock star or an awesome team member or whatever you want to call it. It's actually somebody that makes you feel safe, secure, calm. And so you can actually take your eyes off parts of your business and focus on other parts. Like that's totally possible for you. And so that's probably the first thing I want to address is if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I'm never going to find a unicorn, or this is going to be difficult. Yeah, let's acknowledge that's something you need to learn. Totally. And, the first time we do things, it's probably uncomfortable, but you've got to go into it believing this is 100% possible for me. Yeah, because it is.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think what is so amazing is even thinking like the outcome. Like imagine that feeling where you just know you've got someone there you trust and they are doing what you need them to do without you needing to micromanage them. And maybe even at times, maybe micromanaging could have been part of the problem and that not letting them actually, find their way and do their job. I'm someone that loves people who come in and have that accountability, responsibility. They just want to do it. They want to be left alone to do it. I'm like, that works so well for me, but we're all a little bit different. So I think that that's partly getting to know yourself, right? So that you can hire someone who's a good complement to you and maybe not necessarily the same as you.
Love that. And one of the things that I talk to my clients about when they first start working with me is I call this the dream technique, because part of bringing somebody on and successfully hiring somebody, the starting point for that is being really clear. And what we do is we apply this dream technique where we close our eyes and we imagine it's 12 months' time and we're celebrating how successful this person has been. And from that place, we drop into the specifics. What have they done? How have they done it? What have they created? What have they taken off your hands? What's your business now doing that you weren't doing before? What are you focusing on? What have you stopped doing? Like all these things from there. And then we're able to go, okay, so what's the path to actually make that your reality? And I think the reason why it sometimes goes wrong is that we don't spend that time imagining what it feels and looks like for us as an individual. What we do is we think, oh, hey, Jess has got an OBM. That's cool. Maybe I'll get one of those. And we sort of, we do something like that. And we therefore go and hire somebody that we think is right based on somebody else's experience or what somebody else has done, or maybe it's a coach or maybe it's someone that we admire. And we don't spend enough time looking in the mirror. Because as you quite rightly said, for some people, somebody coming in, taking responsibility, rolling with all the things, being proactive, making all the decisions and just telling you about it when it's done, that feels really supportive. But I've got a lot of clients who actually that scares the crap out of them too. And they actually want to be involved in more of the decision making, and there's certain control and check-in points that they need to be able to thrive. So you've got this same person who's, as an individual, really great, but who will work and feel amazing to one person and who won't work and feel amazing to another person. And that's what we've got to dig into before we actually bring them onto our team.
Yeah, success looks different, right? For different people. Like, what does that success of that role actually look like for you? Because it's not necessarily the same. And I think something that came up for me then, which maybe this is one of the mistakes, and you can tell me more of them in a minute, but something I see, we do a lot in the online business world, and entrepreneurs probably are going to sit there nodding, is we ask other people like, oh, do you know someone who can do this? And so do you have someone that works for you, or that someone who can do that? And, so many hires, I think, are just blind because we base it on a referral. Someone gives us a name and we think, oh, well, they must be good because they work for them. Therefore, they'll be fine for me. And can they do these things? Yes, they can, and potentially hire. And I know that I've done it. I'm not saying I'm not sitting here on my high horse saying like, never do that. But like, yeah, wow. Hadn't really thought about that in that way, that even when you get a referral, you still need to do that process that you've just said of what is the dream? Like, what is the actual person that I need and who would be a good fit? And really to still go through that process of finding out whether they're going to be the right fit for you or not.
Love that you touched on that. I often ask for the difference, or ask people to think about the difference between a referral and a recommendation, because, and it's like, it's probably semantics, but yes, this person's great. This person's an amazing social media manager. This person's amazing at Facebook ads, whatever. But a recommendation is, well, I think this person is going to be great working with you because of, and there's that little bit more personalization of because of what you're like as a person, because of what you're actually needing. Do you know what I mean? Like almost a little bit more of a match. But I think what we do is we think, oh, that feels easy. That's suddenly like, there's a Band-Aid or a shortcut to me going and finding somebody, and I'll just grab your person. And actually what I'd love everybody to hear is that by doing that, we're externalizing the decision to somebody else, and we're placing more authority on their opinion because we doubt our own. So it's like, this person, I'm sure they're going to be amazing because they've been fantastic for her. So it's almost like we're externalizing, or we're giving that power away and that authority away to somebody else. Whereas what we want to do is take that person's name and be like, amazing, what a great start. Now let me bring her into my interview process and have an assessment and a conversation, a beautiful, relaxed conversation, while also assesses, does this person match what I'm looking for? And you can't assess a match and have your own internal opinion on if this person's right for you if you aren't clear on what you're looking for, if you aren't clear on who you need, and who you need is comprised of what you want the person to do, but also how you want them to do it. So once you're clear on that, then you can have a conversation that asks beautiful questions, and you get an insight into the way you like to do what you do, as well as what you know how to do. And then you can be like, this person feels good for me.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's so powerful. So yeah, I think, two things came up for me there when you were speaking. One of them is, I guess, and this would probably be something that's quite common with entrepreneurs, more so than big business, but we're in a hurry, right? We're usually like, let's just do this like now, like yesterday. It's that whole time thing. And I think that, you're the one who's experienced in this, but would you say that we're always, at the last minute, just trying to find this person? We're in a hurry, so we get that recommendation or the referral, referral for someone who could do it. And we're like, great, okay, let's hire her. I've had a chat, we get on, that'll work.
Yes, totally. Absolutely. And I want to offer that you can be in a hurry and move quickly without rushing. So, so a multiple staged assessment process can literally be done in one day. You can place an advertisement, you can brainstorm on who you're looking for, and be having a conversation with potential referral / recommendation the next day or that afternoon if you need to. So I guess, what I'm not saying is you need to take 3 months to find the right person. What I am saying is that you need to follow an objective process that starts with you being really, really clear. That's your first step. Who do I need? What do I want them to do? How do I want them to do it? Then the next step is, how am I going to find out from them if they match what I'm looking for? What sort of questions should I ask? What sort of test maybe should I get them to do? Do I do a little situational test in the which is a conversation, or do I actually send them a test, which is an option? And then, what do I need to tell them about how I like to work and what I'm expecting from the person in the role? And we need to give them an opportunity to ask us questions as well. So you can see that there's like little stages and steps there. Mm-hmm. Now you can hurry, like as in move quickly through those steps, no worries, and do it all, across an afternoon or within 24 hours or 48 hours, and move through the urgency and to get rid of the overwhelm and the stress and all the things. I totally get it. So you can move through it quickly without rushing and making an emotional hiring decision and externalizing, the authority for that decision to somebody else.
Yeah, that is such a good point. We just need to take that moment to breathe, don't we? Calm down, breathe, and still make a good decision about this person. Now, what would you say are the kind of big mistakes or things that we tend to do that maybe lead us down the wrong path or lead to those, hiring mistakes that we probably all want to avoid?
Yeah, well, the big three that we've already started to touch on is rushing to hire. Mm-hmm. And so, really wanting to shift that thought process to you can move quickly without rushing, mm-hmm. making an emotional hiring decision. Mm-hmm. And I guess the best way you can tell if you're making an emotional hiring decision is if there's an element of doubt in your belly and you've got your little fingers crossed under the desk and you're doing it anyway.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because that's that's an emotional fueled decision. So that's the second one. And then the third one is hiring without the clarity you need to actually get the confidence that you want to be able to commit. So I talk about the 3 C's to hiring success. Mm-hmm. The first C is clarity. So being clear on what you're looking for and actually intentionally going into the process with that clarity. The second C is confidence. So that's being able to literally tick, yes, 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 I believe this person can do these things, or no, she can't do this, or etc. And I'm okay with this thing that he, she can't do, will need to learn because I've thought through that impact on my business. That's confidence. And the third C is commitment. And that's not crossing your fingers and thinking, I don't know what they're going to be like. Let me see how it goes, and hedging on their first, week, month. It's actually going, cool. We've both got our eyes open. This feels as good as it can be. Let's jump in. I'm going to invest my time and effort and energy in this person, give them the information and what they need to be successful, and them coming into your business in the same way. So that's the 3 C's. And what I see is people nervous at that commitment stage, crossing their fingers because they're not confident. And the reason they're not confident is because they're not really clear from the outset of who they were looking for. So to answer your question, because I went off on a little bit of a tangent.
No, that's good. Yeah.
The 3 big mistakes that I see is that rushing to hire, making emotional decisions, and not being clear.
Now, the emotional decision I want to ask about, because there's the emotion the feeling in your belly. And I guess a lot of us might go, you go with your gut feel, is this person a good fit or not? And one of the things that I guess a mistake I've made early in my career, when I used to manage in corporate teams and hire a lot, was I tend to hire people I liked. I'm I really like you. I can tell we get along really well. You might have a few candidates, but one you probably just you have that connection with, right? So there's probably a bit of that intuitive gut feel about that person. But I guess the thing is that you potentially can be looking for someone who would be a good friend. And I have had people who become really good friends. I've got some amazing friends who I originally hired to be my staff members. Is that something, now that I'm a bit older and wiser, I'm not saying I would never have hired those people because they're obviously amazing. I love them. But I know that I need to hire for my weaknesses, as opposed to hiring more people just like me. So if I have a whole team of me's, then we're all going to be up there in the big picture, all up there in the vision, all doing that. And who's actually going to be taking care of the details? No one. So, I've ended up in some times where, I'm well, if I just have a team of me's, we've got some sort of really key, not capabilities, but more what we are naturally good at is kind of missing. And you really need that really good flavor in a team and the balance. So now I'm so much more conscious of that when I'm doing hiring. I'm like, I need someone who complements me because they bring the things that I lack. But yeah, that was something that really took me quite a long time to come to that realization.
Yeah. So I think that depending on the stage of business that you're at, your hiring focus varies. So if we jump to the other end of the spectrum, sort of, in a corporate, lots of people, you actually don't need to like the people you're hiring because, there's more people around, their energy or personality can be diluted and you can appreciate their functionality and you don't need to be friends with them, so to speak. Although I totally hear you. It's always beneficial if you want to go and have a coffee or a wine with somebody. So that's the other end of the spectrum. So that's the corporate sort of, the big business end of town. In the smaller, where we all are, small growing businesses, it's definitely more helpful to like the person, but it can't be the deciding factor. So, I mean, your original question was, does gut instinct exist? This feeling that we have in our belly. Let me tell you a story. In my, I've been an entrepreneur and consulting for sort of, 15 years. And about 10 years ago, I used to go and do lots and lots of in-house training, lots of conferences at all sorts of different size businesses on hiring and recruitment. And when I'd start my presentation, one of the things I would do is stand at the front of the room and say, if you had to make a quick hiring decision, would you hire me? And all I had given the room was a little blurb about me. I'm a qualified accountant, I do this, and, I've been doing this for 15 years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I gave them a bit of a blurb. And then most people in the audience were all very kind, were like, yep, we'd hire you. And I go, great. What basis are you making that decision? And some people are like, well, if you're an accountant, it means that, if you're qualified as an accountant, it means that you've got great attention to detail. If you're doing presentations like this, so you love talking to people and blah, blah, blah. And it was obviously all very complimentary and I appreciate it. But the point of my story was, what I would then say to them is, look at all the assumptions that you guys are making that's fueling this decision. And obviously I'm putting you on the spot, and thank you very much for everybody who's saying yes. But the purpose of me saying this is to be like, think of the assumptions that you make within the first 5 minutes of meeting somebody. You've assumed that because I'm a qualified accountant, I love numbers. I'm here to tell you that I stopped being an accountant for a reason. I hate spreadsheets, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess, if gut instinct was always right, if that thing that kicks in the first 5 minutes of when we meet somebody, if it was right, none of us would ever make hiring decisions. So what actually kicks in is a connection based on something and a whole bunch of assumptions based on our previous life experience and all the bias that we're bringing to the table. So I'm not saying ignore your intuition because, it's amazing. I'm not saying ignore it, but I'm saying park it. Acknowledge it and be like, wow, the first 5 minutes feel really great. Then park it and move objectively through a questioning process so that then you can say, I needed somebody who I'm convinced will be proactive, bring ideas, can set the systems up, has, at least 3 years experience in the online world, will be able to troubleshoot, connecting this tech system with this tech system, is able to write, et cetera, et cetera. Go through your list. And I felt really great in the first 5 minutes of speaking to them. So that's the way we want to hire. Yeah. So it's like when we talk about making emotional decisions, it's making decisions based on all the feelings that we're having through the process and at the time that we're hiring, which is always when we're stressed and busy and overwhelmed. But it's like it's letting all the feelings drive the decision as opposed to literally having a list that we either tick off or we cross off. Has this person convinced me they can do this? Has this person convinced me that they want to work like this? Am I convinced this person's going to bring ideas, et cetera, et cetera? And, if you're not sure, then you need to ask the question. And if the answer is no, that might be okay. You might go with them anyway. But then we think about, okay, so am I willing to train them in this? Do I have the time and the space to teach them Kajabi, for example? They haven't touched that product before or whatever it is. So that's making an objective decision as opposed to God, I just need someone. I don't want to do this anymore. If I never have to log into Kajabi again, that's going to be a win. She says that she's good at it. She's worked for so-and-so, they say she's great. I'm going to make a decision based on all of that.
Yeah, that's kind of like the whole throwing money at a problem, which making that kind of rash decision, like, oh, they say that, okay, great, you can solve my problem, let's do it. And I think that this is really solid advice to just take that moment. I think this really as well brings to me another mistake that I can see I made in the past, was probably, especially when the role is new. It's hard because I guess when a role is new, it doesn't exist yet, right? So you are creating it. And often I like to get someone in and really help to leverage their best skills as well as try to get them into the right place that I wanted originally. I think there's a little bit for me of like give and take, because I'm that sort of person where I'm a bit, I'm not straight lines, I'm wavy lines. So I think the mistake that I made, though, sometimes I think was being too open and loose, though, for them. So while I was prepared to, go on a bit of a discovery journey, they really needed more structure. They needed more clear communication, expectations, like what does success look like? And, that's something, again, that I've become aware of over time. I'm like, okay, that doesn't really work for the other person. It might work for me, but, like you're saying, if I'd only got clearer before I began with that role and actually knew exactly what I wanted them to do and then allowed it to evolve naturally over time, it would have been better than trying to create it with the person in flight and not have them on board.
Yeah, I think most of my clients are hiring roles that are brand new to them. And it's a process of finding the specificity in the uncertainty and the grayness. So, for example, if you're hiring somebody because you want them to bring the ideas, to make the suggestions to you, then you get specific around, well, what would make me feel safe? And we have a conversation with them or an assessment in the interview around that. So it might be, okay, so your role is going to be to come in, blank sheet of paper, and to come up with a suggestion as to how we're going to do this, what systems to use, how we're going to put it together, blah, blah, blah. Talk me through your process for working out what I might like, what might be suitable for the business, and how would you present that to me? And then you're assessing from that clarity that you have of where you're thinking, I'd want them to, because then you need to think about, well, how would I want them to present it? Like, would I want them to write it out, give me the pros and cons? Would I expect it in a week? Would I expect it within a month? Do I actually want that all done in 24 hours? Like, how much time would I want them to spend in the research phase? Like, almost challenging yourself to dig down and dig down and dig down, because that opinion's in your belly. But it's like, it's an art to let's get it up and out. And so while I'm working with clients, I'll prompt those questions and they'll be like, oh God, I wouldn't want them to spend more than 24 hours researching it because that'd cost me a fortune. And I'm like, cool. There's a huge assumption that I'm really pleased we got out, because they might have thought that research phase was a month and you're just saying, oh goodness, no, don't just do a couple of hours of research and put a piece of paper in front of me because I want this executed. Yes. So then how quickly do you want them to move from research phase into implementation phase? Oh, you want to launch at the end of the month. Right. So, blah, 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 blah. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, yes, we're gray, and yes, we work in wavy lines and we're unsure and we want them to bring, but actually there's always like a strong desire of what success looks like that's sitting in our belly, in your belly. And it's like, how do we get it up and out? And then yes, that's the stuff that we can put on the table from an expectation perspective after we've, assessed what you'd naturally do and how you'd want to do it. Because then we can be like, okay, cool. So this is what I'm looking for. We're launching in a month. So I'd be looking for you to initially do research for 3 days, present something to me. We'd have a meeting based on all your recommendations. We'd make a decision, then you'd move to execute. Yeah. How does that feel? Bang, bang, bang.
Yeah. Amazing. It's so funny because I was thinking back to this one time I asked someone to investigate a new social media platform that has appeared on the scene, and they took a while. I was like, this is really odd, and came back and they'd written out a whole social media strategy, which I was like, thanks, that wasn't quite what I'd asked you to do. I don't really need a strategy. We were just looking at this and then to them, obviously that was like just so disappointing because they put all this effort into writing this big, long strategy. I don't think in that instance I wasn't clear about what I wanted, but it was really interesting what happened, right? Well, ending that story because it wasn't a fail in terms of the recruitment, but some people who are listening may have had an experience where someone didn't work out, right? Or what you might call a hiring fail. And it may play heavily on your mind, or, you have that thought of like, oh God, I've tried that before. I've tried to hire and it didn't work out, therefore that's it. I'm never doing it again type of thing. Or, I guess then we're in that place of really fearful about hiring again. So what would you say to someone who has experienced that in that place right now, about how do we move forward from that experience? How do you want us to look at that? And then how do we move forward from that into
So first of all, you're in good company. We've all made hiring mistakes, my hands up. And even as a seasoned recruiter, I've still, in my last 10, 12 years as being an entrepreneur, I've absolutely made hiring mistakes as well. Just let it be what it is. And that's part of your journey. And I think of the hiring process as getting as clear as you can, asking great questions, and then laying it all out on the table and allowing the other person to choose if they want to opt in, and you choosing if you want to opt in with them, and allowing both sides to gracefully opt out if it doesn't feel good as well. And if you go into it sharing as much information as you can, having given it some proper thought in advance, if it doesn't feel great after a month, you have still established a really great open relationship with the person, because that's actually what often we overlook in the hiring process. Is it's your opportunity to build some really great foundations for the conversations that you'll have in the future. So, sharing with them feedback, being as transparent as you can be, asking them and explaining to them, like, I'm going to ask you some questions, they're a little bit structured. It's for me to try and find out some information from you. Then I'm going to explain to you about the role. I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask the questions, because I want you to think about if this is right for you as it is I'm thinking if you're right for me. So let's try and get a mutual fit, et cetera, et cetera. Like, using this language and actually showing them that you care and you're forming a relationship. And so then, 4, 6, 8 weeks, whatever down the track, if it doesn't feel good, it's a conversation that you can both then opt out of gracefully as well. Mm-hmm. So I guess, 2 things is what I've said is, if you've made a mistake in the past, don't worry, just let it be the learning that you needed at the time. And then next time, just go into it going, okay, how do I get clearer? How do I ask better questions? How can I position myself to make the best decision I can? Trusting and knowing that if it's not the right one and we work that out down the track, I can have that conversation with the person, and it won't, there'll be no bad taste in anyone's mouth because of the openness and, the journey that we're on together. If you come over into my world and you listen to the podcast or anything like that, this concept of clarity that I talk about, you literally hear me say it 20 times in every single podcast. It's so important. Mm-hmm. And just making the effort to try to be clear and communicating that to the person goes a really long way. Even if the reality works out to be slightly different and you're like, well, this is what I thought we were going to be doing, but here we are over here. Like that's also okay. That's business. That's startup, early growth phase. So, and that's okay as well.
Yeah. So if they're in a position right now where you're thinking, oh gosh, I think I might have made the wrong hire. Like, I've got someone, it's really not working out the way that I thought. What would you say is the best next step? Like, how do you approach that situation?
Well, you get really clear now on what the business needs. So you spend that time now diving deep into, what do I need someone in this role to be doing? What does the business need somebody to be doing? How do we need that person to be working? We dive into that now. And then we have a conversation with them saying, I've been spending a lot of time giving this some thought, and this is what I feel like the business needs. And we give them the opportunity to opt into that new way or opt out if it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. And I guess that's why doing something like a trial period is probably really, really smart, right? Because you give both people that opportunity to try out, like, is this working out? More so than just in an interview where, we can have that situation. I know I've seen it happen so many times where someone in an interview presents in a certain way, they answer all the questions in the right way, all of these things, and then you get them into the role. It's like, oh, it's like there's a different person here. And I don't know whether you have any really great wisdom around that or how to circumvent it, but I've always found that having, actually just getting in with somebody, obviously try to get to the right person in the interview, but having that trial period really gives you both just that little bit of breathing space. And I think when we can approach it more, objectively, like this doesn't mean that you're wrong or I'm wrong or that, there's anything bad going on. It just may be that we're not a great fit, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Then it can be quite a good way to do things, like, in a healthy relationship.
Yeah, trials are great as long as we're not trying the person because we don't know how to assess them. Trials are great. Similarly, having some sort of like test activity or a trial activity. So, if you're hiring a social media person, then you can say, look, this all feels great to me. Can I give you like an example of something to go and work on? Go and have a look at my last 30 days worth of posts, draft up 3 captions for me, go into Canva, use these templates, blah, blah, blah. And it can be paid if you want to. And let's just use that as an example of you to see what it's like working for me to see what you produce. And then you have a really robust conversation around that. How long did that take? Oh, it took you 10 hours. Okay, I'm looking for you to produce that in 3 hours. How does that make you feel? What took so long? I don't like the language, et cetera, et cetera. So you can bring that trial example into the actual assessment process as well if you're hiring, and I recommend that for lots of different roles. So for example, I've got a client who's a bookkeeper. There's a technical test as part of it. Lots of clients who've hired social media managers, and we always need to check their design ability, even if they're working within your templates, et cetera, et cetera. So there's great ways to bring that into the assessment process. And so it's not and you've also, when you get to that decision point, you can say, this feels really good to me. How does it feel for you? Let's move forward on the basis that we're deciding that this is for the long haul, but let's have a check-in point. After 1 week or after a month, we'll just see how it feels for both sides. So, if we're hiring a subcontractor, that's much easier. If we're hiring an employee, then legally we often have official, trial periods and whatnot as well. And, if we move to talking about that, I call these check-in conversations correcting conversations, where we can actually have a conversation with somebody and say, oh, so this is what you're doing. Let me give you some feedback about what is really great about that and what I'd like to see differently, or what, where it's not quite meeting the mark, or et cetera. And if we set the scene for those conversations in that relationship building, interview stage, then when we go to have that conversation, it doesn't need to feel like, feedback or constructive criticism or all those horrible words that we've heard from corporate. It just gets to be a conversation. So talk me through why you produced a social media strategy. What made you think that was, okay. Then we understand a little bit about ourselves and our communication style. And we go, okay, cool. This is what I was looking for. We correct them back over and we say, this is what I'm looking for. Let me see. I wonder how I can get more specific. By this point, I want you to do this. Send it to me here, blah, 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 blah. And together you get to bring the person back on track. So I call that a correcting conversation. But like if you do find yourself 1, 2, 3 months down the track and you just think, wow, like this person's, producing something that feels like Spanish versus English and it's just not working, then absolutely it's a matter of, this is what I need. This is what the business needs, isn't quite what I'm receiving from you. Can we have a discussion? Do you feel like you can do what the business needs? And if not, let's part ways gracefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I've heard a saying a while back, and, it's something that I always have carried with me because I was like, that's so true. And it was A players don't work for B leaders, or they don't select B leaders, right? So, it really made me think. The reason why I love that so much is like we all want the A player. We want that person who's the dream person, the right fit. And that will be different for all of us. But it makes me think, well, how am I showing up? What am I doing to be a great leader? Am I giving them what they need to succeed? So instead of me sitting there getting frustrated, like, they're doing that again, or whatever else, and getting annoyed and frustrated in what's happening, I sit there and think, what am I doing to create this? Or how am I contributing to this? And, yes, it'll usually come back to, I haven't been clear enough, or I haven't communicated what was in my brain, which to me is like really clear. I've got this vision of what I want. I haven't told them about it. Like, of course they're not on the page because I haven't brought them onto the page with me, and I think when I can remove that myself out of the moment of frustration and actually step back, I always see, well, where have I not lived up to what I would consider being a good leader? And, of course, we want to be that A leader, so we attract the A players. Like, people want to come and work for us, right? So what are those traits that we as a leader should be looking for? Or, how do you want us to be looking at ourselves as opposed to our team in this whole scenario? Like, because we're really the head of the team, right? We're the one who's leading the way.
Yeah, love that question. I think that we need to be a leader who's authentic and who's on a learning journey. And we need to give ourselves and the business and our potential new person the time and the clarity that is needed to hire well. I feel like that's the biggest thing, is that A players don't want to work. And then we need to be willing to systemize.
Okay.
Because A players can come in and work in the chaos, deal with the crazy. But if you're being honest with yourself and you look in the mirror, very few people would actually say that they want a chaotic, crazy business. So actually what they want is something that feels organized, flowing and spacious, where we're not putting fires out the night before, carts opening, etc. So most A players, yes, they can deal with crazy and chaos for a short time and they can clean it up, but they don't want to stay and live in that. So to not be running a chaotic, crazy, last minute business, you need to be willing to be systemized. And you can be systemized without losing all your flexibility and all your creativity and ability to innovate. So, to elevate into, and you don't need to be perfect. So don't put an A leader up on a pedestal, that's unattainable. It just needs to be an authentic leader on a leadership journey. Sorry, I'll say that again. An authentic leader who's on a learning journey, who's clear with their expectations, who communicates them well, and is willing to systemize to make the life of the team and the business easier.
Yeah, so true. I think systems and processes are the thing that actually gives you the space for creativity, because when you're in that chaotic state, you actually are just in the chaos, and it's so hard to rise above it or get out of it and actually see what's maybe right in front of you. Like, your blind spots are huge when it's chaotic because you're all over the place. And, as someone who's not and I spoke before about, our types and personality types. Like, I am the big picture person. I'm the wave person. I'm not the straight line system process person who, probably thrives on creating them. I'm not, but I love them. So I'm like the automation queen of my business. I'm like, how can I take this off my plate? How can I set up a system or process that technology can do this for me so that I don't have to do it? And we can actually have humans doing the things that humans have to do that a piece of tech can't do. So, it's really interesting, isn't it, how you say that? Because, I can see that while that's not my natural place, like, yes, I completely agree, like, systems, processes, absolutely essential to create that feeling of space and let all the creativity really flow. Amazing. I think we have so much we could talk about. I'm like sitting here thinking of like a million thoughts going through my head, but I feel like we've touched on a lot of things today, and it's a really great place to be when we're looking at, that whole interviewing, hiring process, because it is so important, and the value to the business when you have been able to hire successfully, when you've got the right people in your team, it's just amazing. Like, it's more valuable than what we can ever think. And you kind of, when you have the right people, you think, well, how did I ever survive before without the right people? So do you have any final, pieces on, really just, if someone's sitting there thinking, yeah, I hear all of that, but, any kind of buts that we need to get over, like, just really the value of having this piece in your business done so well, and then, how we can kind of learn more about it.
Yeah, I would lean into, just because you can, should you? and just start to look at all the things that you've done in the last week and the last month and ask yourself, did I have to do that? Like, is that a zone of genius? You know, is the impact to my client or whoever it is so much better because I touched it? Or actually, is that just something functional that somebody else can do? So really start to critically look at what you're doing and then once you sort of start there, then you can start to think of, how would I teach someone else? How would I show them? What would I need so that I felt safe for somebody else doing that for me?
Yeah.
And just baby steps. And then I guess when you hire well before you think you need it, if you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, I need this now, I should have hired last week, totally get it. We've all been there. But if you're also sitting there thinking, yeah, maybe next year, maybe later, maybe at some stage in the future, that's perfect too. Start preparing now. So don't wait until you're crazy busy, crazy stressed, wanting to launch a product next month and thinking, oh my goodness, I need I need people to help me.
Yeah.
Start now, start that planning and clarity piece right now. And I've got a workshop called the Hiring and Interviewing Masterclass, which teaches you how to get clarity. And it gives you one of my tools, which is a clarity matrix. So dive into that, invest in the learning and start to work out, well, how do I get out of my head what I want the person to do, but also how I want them to do it, and start mapping it now. So basically, don't wait until you're feeling really desperate and stressed. Take little micro steps now, thinking about, just because I can, should I? How would I get someone else to do that? And what are all the things that I'd like to hand over? And how would I like someone to support me, or more people to support our team?
Yeah.
And just start to move it forward now.
Yes. So good. I will link up that masterclass in the show notes for anyone who would love to jump in and really nail this, because I think sometimes it sounds easy and then you sit down to do it, you're like, oh, I just wish someone would just show me what questions I need to answer and the steps so I don't have to think about it, right? So fantastic, let's do that. And what I was thinking about there when you were talking was, it is so powerful, like you said, to kind of have that vision on what your future hires are going to be. And that's definitely something that, I teach my clients as well in my program, is find your zone of genius, as in figure out what all the things are in your business. And you might be wearing all of the hats right now, but that isn't your job isn't the business. You're just wearing multiple hats to begin with, and you can basically offload the hats as you grow. But I was always like, what are the first ones to go? It's going to be where I've got really low proficiency, my skill levels are pretty low and I don't like it. First thing to get off my plate, right? The next things are those low level tasks that you said, you're just functional and you're not really doing, it's not worth you doing them as the leader of the business, because what if you get them off your plate? And this is where I think a lot of people have that fear of oh, it's going to cost me X amount to have the staff member in. But really, what is that, yes, you're going to pay them, but what is that creating for you? What can you do in that time that you've just created? And if you can earn 10 times that amount in that time, then you're not spending money, you're actually earning money. It's actually creating more wealth in the business. And I think for a lot of people, that's a concept that can be a huge game changer, because suddenly, instead of it feeling like it's an outgoing and an expense, it's actually an investment in more growth and income. And I've had clients who've gone from being just the one person to having a team, and they're like, oh, I've got this business, oh my God, I've just hired another person, and it's almost like they can't believe it. But it's because it finally got the key, that it was taking that off their plate created more ability to bring in more.
Love that.
So good. I think I would love for people to join you for your masterclass, really learn hiring, interviewing. What is it that we should be asking? How do we even figure out what that role is? And that's probably the critical thing. That sounds so easy, but it's so true. So once you've figured out what is it that you want to outsource, well, then you need to go to that next level of detail.
Definitely. How do you get clear? And then what do you need to ask to actually find out if the person's a match? So yeah, it's a masterclass replay that's available to watch at any time. So just dive in and just start to Yep, let the learning sink into you, start to apply it, and give yourself the time and space to just move through this next exciting part of your business journey.
Amazing. That's incredible. Thank you so much, Paula. Really appreciate your time with us today. This has been such a powerful episode. Lots of fun. Love talking about team, because I think we often talk about so many other parts of business, but great businesses are built by great teams. And I really believe in the value of it. So thank you. I value your time.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Do you know what the number one challenge reported by the women joining my Facebook community, My Tribe, said that they were struggling with their marketing in 2021, and in fact, even in 2020 as well? And that was exactly how they should reach their ideal client. How do they even get in front of them in order to build their audience in the first place? That was it. And it wasn't a pick and mix. I didn't give them that answer. It was a free text question. So they could write in there anything they wanted at all. And the number of times that I saw somebody say, how to create awareness, how to get in front of my ideal client and build my audience. So many people just challenged by it. And why is that when there's such an abundance of ways that we can get in front of the ideal client? And I think it's probably that is exactly it. It's so overwhelming, isn't it? What should you do? What should you choose? What are the best ways? Whatever it is that you're doing right now might not be working. And I think it's a great time to sit back, reflect, and figure out what's the right way for you to do it. What are the ways that you're going to reach your prospective clients in 2022? So if that sounds like you, if that might have been what you wrote down in the questions on what is your biggest challenge with your marketing currently, then you're going to absolutely love the new freebie that I've just put together for you. It's called 12 Brilliant Ways to Reach Your Ideal Client. And in it, I share with you the 12, in my view, 12 top ways that you could use in your marketing plan this year to reach a bigger, broader audience in order to attract those ideal clients in to your inner circle, into your, really well-defined audience and become real leads for you. So if you'd like to get your hands on this brand new freebie, then all you need to do is go to jessicaosborne.com/12 ways. So it's 12 ways. Very easy. You can download it there, and this is a little bit of great resource for your planning, for the planning of the new year. See what you're going to change up. What is it that you maybe haven't been doing that you could be doing? And what are those things that you've been doing and they're not very effective, and maybe you're going to drop them out of your plan this year? So please head over, grab the freebie. If you want the link, it's in the show notes. And let's get you moving on up, having more success with your marketing in 2022.